So the rioting is continuing. It is breaking out nationwide, cities all over the country, and in other countries. There's riots everywhere, cities are burning, but we're seeing different responses from different groups. Some places you have peaceful protests and cops standing in solidarity with the people, and other places you're having full-scale riots break out and the cops coming out in full force and it's violent. So if you look here, we have an article, talks about how police erupt in violence nationwide. So this says the ongoing protests following the killing of George Floyd were caught up in violence again on Saturday, as police all over the country tear-gassed protesters, drove vehicles through crowds, opened fire with non-lethal rounds on journalists or people on their own property, and in at least one instance, pushed over an elderly man who was walking away with a cane. Here are some of the ways law enforcement officers escalated the national unrest. Example 1. National Guard and MPD sweeping our residential street, shooting canisters at us on our own front porch. So here you have officers firing and trying to oppress people who are in their own homes, on their own front porches. We move on. Police just raided the gas station we were sheltering at. After shooting press multiple times and raising my press card in the air, after shouting press multiple times and raising my press card in the air, I was thrown to the ground. Then another cop came up and pepper sprayed me in the face while I was being held down. We've seen this a few times now, them acting very negatively toward the press. People there just trying to document what's going on, and they're getting either beaten and knocked to the ground, or they're getting arrested and having their equipment taken, or they're getting pepper sprayed or hit with rubber bullets or whatever it may be to shut them down. Additionally, cops didn't like me filming the burning car, so they came at me with batons, hitting my bike. There's audio and video to go with some of these, and they show you clearly right here. This guy says, I cannot believe what I just witnessed. They pulled up onto the square with a police siren and did this. And then it shows, them approaching people and beating them back if you watch the videos. Another one, this boy had his hands up when the NYPD officer pulled his mask down and pepper sprayed him. So again, very aggressive, violent behavior. And at the end of this video segment, I'm going to include a few clips of some of this violent behavior for you to see, but we'll save that for the end so those of you on audio can continue to see everything else we have here. So now we have all those violent instances, right? We have people going absolutely nuts, and the police are pushing back full force, and the freaking press and people in their homes are taking a brunt of the damage from this. And while some of the rioters, I'm sure, are getting arrested, you have other innocent people getting arrested that aren't doing anything. And there's just high tension on both sides. You have the rioters, some rioters acting out like crazy, destroying things, and you have some police responding extremely violently. Now take a look at this. Here in Michigan, we have a sheriff. This one's titled, Walk With Us. Michigan sheriff walks with protesters after chants. So, a Michigan sheriff joined protesters in Flint Township on Saturday, putting down his weapon and saying, I want to make this a parade, not a protest. The county sheriff, Chris Swanson, spoke with demonstrators who were met by police officers in riot gear. The only reason we're here is to make sure that you get a voice. And that's it. This is what Swanson had said. These cops love you. That cop over there hugs people, and he was pointing at an officer. He was speaking to the crowd protesting police brutality and the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis. He smiled and high-fived people in the crowd who responded by chanting, Walk with us. So he did. So he continues to walk with them, and people on social media, are praising his actions and whatnot. And then we also look at places like this. You have officers marching with protesters and kneeling with protesters. There's a lot of these tense situations, and people are, coming up to these cops with video, and they're taking a knee and saying, we stand with you. And this is a nice looking thing, right? There's no violence between these people. The protesters are both peaceful. The cops are peaceful. Look at the other scenario. The sheriff's walking with all the protesters. They're peaceful. He's peaceful. He doesn't even need to, be afraid for his life. He's walking with them. They got their arms around each other. It's not scary for either group. But then you look at the places where there's violence, and both sides are extremely violent, and everyone is on edge, and things look like they're just about to explode. You have two very different extremes here. And with regards to like the police kneeling here and everything, some of the people were commenting that this is a great sign, but what we're really looking for is action. Well, okay, well, these cops in other cities that aren't anywhere near Minneapolis, where the whole George Floyd death incident happened, they can't really do a whole lot when they're just standing out there policing things. What they're doing at this time is showing you that, hey, we don't agree with police brutality and we stand with you. There's not a lot they can do right there. Of course, you're looking for action, but that's got to come from other places, not right there with these rioters. So people like to find stuff to complain about and everything. What they're doing is a good thing here. And like I said, I'm going to show you videos of each of these here at the end so you can see the stark contrast. It's interesting to see the different dynamics that are out there, right? You have one that's completely peaceful and one that is just flat out violent. So why do we have these two different reactions? Well, it's the people involved, right? And the problem is there's essentially two different groups in this area that, have the responsibility. You have the responsibility of the officers to handle the situation peacefully and respectfully and show that they care and that they aren't, cold-blooded, heartless people out there to kill everyone who, disobeys them. And then you also have protesters that need to show that they're not violent and they can show up and be peaceful. And here's the problem. So in these peaceful places, you've got people putting aside their pride, right? This sheriff is able to say, a lot of people are bashing police all around, not just, the officers that do bad things. They're bashing police forces as a whole. But you have this sheriff putting aside his pride, saying, you know what? A bunch of people might have said a bunch of nasty things about all of us, but we're not all Derek Chauvin. We're not all that guy who killed George Floyd. We're not all those people who are terrible cops, breaking the law, infringing on your rights. We stand with you. He sets aside his pride and he works with the people. What do the people do in response? They welcome him in with open arms and say, just walk with us, walk with us. So you have people, that's the thing, right? You gotta be able to put aside some pride and work with people. And here's where it's difficult. You get in these other cities where the violence is just flat out insane and people are rioting all over the place. It's hard because if just one of the two sides does something that is aggressive and, comes at the other side immediately gets defensive and feels like they need to defend themselves. So it doesn't matter who started it. Let's say a rioter started it and, they threw something at the police. Well, now the police are on guard and they feel like they need to push back. So maybe they throw out some tear gas or, they fire some rubber bullets or they just push forward a little bit more aggressively. Well, then all the people are now on edge and they're throwing more stuff and it just erupts and gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So it's really hard. It's a hard thing to do, but if you can get enough good people in there and start it that way, I mean, you got to have good officers and you got to have protesters, and people need to be standing up for what's right in these situations. The good protesters that aren't the ones out there planning to go riot and all this stuff, maybe they need to help stop these rioters and actually stand up for people. You saw, many of you may have seen just this elderly couple standing out in front of their store getting beat by 2x4s with rioters, or anyone's out there defending their business getting beat into near death states because of these rioters. If you've got protesters out there who want to peacefully do this, help put an end to this and help stop it. On the flip side, officers that are out there, silencing press and beating people down or kids down or anyone down who's peacefully protesting, you're in the wrong too. I can't put myself in your shoes. I don't know how, you might be scared for your life and it's a scary thing, but you're also infringing on the rights of these individuals and you're going to lose trust of people that might have stood with you as well. So that's what needs to happen. You got to have people take accountability and, stand up for what's right on each side. And then you can end up with people like this sheriff and these protesters in Michigan or other places where, like I said, we're seeing these in like Kentucky and other places where the officers are standing with the people in New Jersey. And that would be a whole lot better to see. Can you imagine if instead of these riots and places burning down all over the country, it was all just these peaceful protests and people walking together saying, hey, we stand with each other. Police violence should not be happening. George Floyd's death should not have happened. They can stand with each other. And one last issue I have with the whole situation is with regards to them demanding justice for Floyd, and it has to do with, the whole Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter controversy thing that people argue back and forth over. And a lot of times, so George Floyd, died at the hands of the police, and immediately it comes out and people say, Black Lives Matter. And yes, they do. That's absolutely true. And also people come out and say, well, it's not just Black Lives that matter, it's all lives that matter. And yes, that's absolutely true. But I feel like people are missing the entire concept of it. It's everybody's wanting to make it about race or, feel included in the group of the race that's being, oppressed. But maybe we don't need to be making this about race. And maybe that's actually causing more division than unity. If instead of people arguing back and forth about Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter, maybe it should be more of a human lives matter. And you know what? Instead of focusing on and coming out every time and saying, police brutality on Black lives is a bad thing. It's everywhere. We need to stop it. What you're saying is true. It is a bad thing. It is terrible and it should not happen. But you're almost like cutting out an entire portion of the population that might be more keen to stand with you if you recognize that they are also affected by violence. And you might not want to admit it, and maybe you just haven't seen any evidence of it, but you can go search for yourself. There is evidence of, police brutality on white people, on Asian people, on Hispanic people, everybody, every blonde hair, brown hair, people with, I'm sure, one arm or one leg, all different types of people have probably been wronged by an officer one way or another. And, all types of people have probably encountered a great officer that, respected their rights and handled things the right way. So instead of trying to limit it to a group, realize that, and we even saw this with the recent pandemic, all kinds of people's rights were being infringed upon. They were trying to go out and have their businesses open, and a lot of officers were shutting them down. There's others that stood up for their rights. So instead of making it a identity politics type thing and narrowing the group down and causing division, bring people together. Say, you know what? Both of our lives matter. If a cop did something to you and it violated your rights and you were hurt, I'm going to stand up for you. And then that person looks back at you and says, you know what? I stand up for you too, because we're both people. It both matters. We're going to stand together. And if people create this sense of unity, and just the problem people have, right, is that people in places of authority appear to be abusing their power in some circumstances. Not all, but in some. And they want to weed out this problem and have more faith and trust in the police forces. And some places do. That's why, you want to elect a sheriff you trust and someone who's going to do right by your people in your area. So, with that said, let's try to be more unified, and instead of bringing race into everything, let's focus on each other and actually caring about each other and taking care of the actual problem, which is abuse of power by an authority figure. And again, not all authority figures. Some of these other authority figures are recognizing that that was an abuse of power. If we can all get together and agree and just stand together, you know how much more effective that would be? You know how much more people would come up with solutions and actual ways to fix the problem? Right now, we can't come up with a way to fix the issue because everyone's yelling back and forth insults at one another, blaming one another, creating conflict, and this just leads to rioting and people burning things down. Do you want the country to be completely divided forever? So that's what we can do personally, and we can share these kind of things with others and encourage others to, do the same and hopefully lower the level. A lot of us can't necessarily help the way the media throw race into everything, but we can at least help how much we do it ourselves. So I encourage you, guys, go out there, share this, leave a like, subscribe, but the best thing is to just share it with people, or tell them yourselves. Get people unified over this. And like I said, I'm going to show some video clips before we exit out here, and share those with people. I'll even put links down in the description so you can share them with people, and just so they can see that we can stand together and actually get through these things the right way instead of practically ripping apart the country at the seams.
The only reason we're here is to make sure that you got a voice. That's it. There we go. Don't think for a second that he represents who these cops are from all over the county and around this nation. We go out there to help people, not do that nonsense. We want to be with y'all for real. So I took my helmet off and laid the batons down. I want to make this a parade, not a protest. You got little ones here, you got dogs, so what's up? So listen, I'm just telling you, these cops love you. That cop over there hugs people, so you tell us what you need to do.
Walk with us! 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 Walk with us!
Let's walk! Let's walk!
Guys, I hope you got a lot of information from those videos. Like I said, make sure to share this kind of stuff and get it out there. Send people links, try to unify people. And that's going to do it for this segment. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. I will see you guys in the next one later on this afternoon. You guys have a good one.